everybody, and welcome back to the SMITE Challenger Circuit over with our good friends in Europe. Our first set of the day is done, a nice win over in that regard over to the Gladiators. And now we move on to our second set of the day. The Aaru Scorpions and the Highland Ravens will be our second matchup here. My name is J Max Hucker. I've got Gormizer joining me over on the desk this time around as we get ready to jump into there. But before we go any further with the SCC, we have to give a good shout over to our friends over at Skulls. So make sure if you haven't already, go to shop.smiteproleague.com and check out the great jerseys that Skulls has to offer for our SMITE Pro League teams out there. They're really nice. All of our players are wearing them as far as they're concerned. I know I've been hearing about all the people who have been ordering them. They're really nice jerseys. I'm not going to lie. The Scarabs and the Kings ones both stand out to me the most because I kind of do like that green and black. Not going to lie. I like the orange, but the green looks pretty good, Gore. Not going to lie. So,
also, I think it's worth mentioning, if you get a jersey and when it arrives, you take a selfie in it and tag at SMITE Pro and probably the team Twitter, we'll probably feature on broadcast.
I mean, we'll probably get a little retweet out there for you. So
that too.
If that's a good incentive for you to buy a jersey, then go for it over there. Remember, shop.smiteproleague.com, shop.hi-rez.studios.com/SPL. Thank you so much for Skulls for being the merch sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. Like I said, I'm J-Mac. I got Gore joining me on the desk for the second set of the SCC for the European region. It'll be our only other matchup for Europe, at least today. We'll finish those ones out tomorrow with Hex Mambo and the remainder of theirs. So let's take a look maybe at the schedule and the standings to kind of see how things have been breaking out as far as the EU region is concerned. Because remember, it's very early on in the phase. We're only in their second week of play. 5 total weeks that these guys actually do end up playing out there. Only one round robin phase for these. It's not like the SPL where they have their double round robin. It's just a one and done for these guys. So making sure every single win counts. Gilded Gladiators found their 2-0 over the Niflheim Wargs in the very first set just a few moments ago. Now we jump into that second one with the Ravens and the Scorpions, and then Hex Mambo and Styx Ferryman face off tomorrow. 2 undefeated teams, though, with the Ravens and the Scorpions facing on this one, if I'm not mistaken. Both of these teams able to find a win last week. I think it was the Scorpions over the Gladiators. Ravens were able to find it over the Wargs, if I'm not mistaken, though I could be potentially on there. I don't have the immediate site right back up to me, but as you can see, Mambo, Scorpions, and Ravens all currently sitting 1-0 in the standings.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one that again, looking for these two teams, having a team that is undefeated now become defeated, right? Go down to 1-1. Not the end of the world if you're 1-1. I think you're still very much in kind of control of your fate versus where the Wargs are at, right? Being 0-2 definitely has a little bit more work, I think, cut out for them. But it also is even better if you look at the other side of that, right? It's easy to look at the doom and gloom at the bottom, but looking at the top of the standings, looking at where these teams are going to go, specifically getting to 2-0 standings, you're in a great spot. Because again, you're just you're aiming right now for December. You're looking for I believe top 4. There's going to be some SOC teams that end up joining the mix. All of that to try and qualify for Worlds. So I think that this is a really good spot for both these teams to be in. And the loss here doesn't hurt, but a win here is very helpful.
Yeah, making sure that you can get that win now is probably the most crucial thing that you can do for these guys, especially when you're going up against a team like the Highland Ravens. Obviously, for all of these guys need to make sure that they're finding their wins, and a pretty strong roster for the Highland Ravens. If you didn't know, Kana, pretty good soul laner, very highly rated amongst the SCC, adapting in the jungle.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal, maybe just a little bit. And then Angry, Ice Silence, and Vaporish Coast as well. This is a stacked roster. I mean, Gore, when I see a team like this, now obviously we have Hex Mambo, which we know how good Hex Mambo is. This gives me the old belt slap and Elysium vibes with this kind of a team.
Yes, and I'm going to say this now. They're lucky they're playing now instead of 9-10. Because 9-10 with the Thor buffs that just happened, are you kidding me? Adapting was going to run the show. So luckily for you, you don't have to worry about that just yet. Unfortunately for us, that also means that we're probably not going to get to see a lot of adapting Thor for a little while. But I do still think that, yes, this is a very powerful team. Like you said, it gives me a lot of kind of memories of Hex Mambo. And like you said, their team prior, Belt Slap, things like that. A lot of really good players together playing in a very, very compact way that usually gives them a very comfortable lead. That usually allows them to win more team fights, right? It's just winning begets winning begets winning. They understand the game really well. When you have Coast, who has a lot of competitive experience, especially going to land and stuff like that, but adapting, two-time back-to-back world champ, one of the first to ever
Yeah.
do it. You have to imagine you've got a lot of veteran leadership in this roster to really kind of push you forward. And then, like you said, for a while, Angry was a player I was looking at as like, hey, if like you're looking for mid laners and you can convince them to move over to the stateside, Angry is definitely on that list.
Oh,
to me,
yeah.
Kana, I think, has been not only with Coast for a long time in terms of competitive play, but also one of the most competitive solo laners I think we've gotten to see in this region.
And they're going to be facing off against the Aaru Scorpions on the opposite side. Panvich, Rapio, Gunter, Preds, and Davey rounding out the roster for the Aaru Scorpions. And this is a team that, back in phase number 1, Scorpions really struggled to kind of find their identity, to really figure out what it was, that final little thing that they needed in order to kind of push themselves over the edge, find some of those key wins for themselves. Phase 2, we saw the Scorpions on an up-and-up. They went from being 6th seed to, I believe, is 4th seed. They were one of the final teams to kind of get that closeout into the group. And now they're a team that's currently sitting in the top 3. Again, we're only 1 week in, but, I mean, this is a team that, with some of the changes through, adding Rapio into the jungle gives them an extra level of aggression. I think that this team was missing back in Phase 1 and Phase 2. So I think adding Rapio here for this squad gives them a little bit of extra diversity in the jungle.
Yeah, I actually think that this is going to be a fun split to watch for the Scorpions, because these are changes, and we've seen this even in the SBL, right? Changes going into Phase 3 are changes made for Worlds runs. Changes made in Phase 3 are changes to win and to try and do as much as you possibly can. That's what this screams to me for the Scorpions. So a really good, again, successful last week that I think looked solid for them. It's translating that into week to week every single time. And considering what we just saw from the Gladiators and knowing that the Scorpions were able to 2-0 them, I think that it puts us in a very interesting spot once again here. How this team is going to adapt to it. Like you said, Rapio, specifically in the jungle, it was the Fenrir play last week that caught me by surprise. I didn't expect the pick, one, and then follow-up, I didn't expect him to perform on it the way he did. I mean, it was really, really solid for them. So that's where my mind is going for these two teams right now. It is a jungle matchup, I think, to meet the ages. I also think that mid, and specifically carry, because we got some ROM play from Davey last week, that really comes into it. Panvich versus Kana is another one that I think is going to be important to determine a lot of pressure in this game. Kana, if you can get like the Guan Yu, which is something that they were playing even before it became super meta, all of a sudden you've got that pressure, the healing, and maybe out-rotating. So I think that that's going to be very important for the Scorpions to stay on top of.
Yeah, I'm very curious how the drafting phase is going to go for these two teams. And luckily for us, we don't have to wait any longer. We can just jump right in to picks and bans for game number 1 between the Aaru Scorpions and the Highland Ravens. I mean, looking at just the last matchup from prior week for these teams out there, Aaru Scorpions jungler Rapio played Fenrir twice, went 7-2 and 9-4.
Yep.
Pretty impressive, not even including the extra assists in there. Then you look at the opposite side for adapting. Didn't have the greatest Thor game, only had a 1-2 performance on a loss against the Ferryman.
Not yet.
And then
Just wait.
9-0.
Wait till Tuesday, baby.
9-0 Ratatoskr the very next game after that. Gets taken away from him because of how well he did. And then he still had like a 4-2 Naja game. So adapting, showing that he does have the ability to flex between multiple gods in the same set if needed. And it makes me kind of wonder if we're going to see Rapio just go back to the Fenrir. I mean, he got it twice, won on it both times pretty handedly. Wouldn't be surprised if Rapio gets that maybe within the top 3 of those picks as we start to see the first bans come through. Ratatoskr, take it away from adapting. Not going to give that to him. And then Tyr, Hercules, and then Fenrir or not Fenrir, Freya and Guan Yu, the other god that starts with an F, besides Fafnir, I guess. And then Naja.
You beat me to it, and my brain was like, all right, hold on, got to think of the F god.
We're getting close to completing the ABCs of Smite gods, if I'm not mistaken. We should be very close if we haven't already.
How do you mean? Like one god
Like
of every
one god of every
letter?
of every letter. I think
Agni, Bastet, Cucullin,
Daji,
Erlongshen,
Fafnir.
Fafnir,
Why not? G.
This
Guan
is
Yu.
Yeah, you're gonna learn to see how fast we can remember our alphabets. G,
Guan,
H,
Hera,
I, Izanami,
J, Giannis. I almost forgot we had Giannis. What? K.
Kukulkan.
Cool.
All right, we've nailed
good.
it at least that far.
We got to the Ks. We've got to the Ks so far. And as far as these teams are
I'm about to
concerned, they've
look up
gotten
the alphabet, bro.
They've gotten through their first 3 picks. Hades, no surprise, top solo laner at the moment. Yu Huang and Kepri picked up, no surprise. Those are also 2 top picks, especially this Yu Huang that kind of snuck its way back into the SPL last week. But as far as the SCC has been going through, this has been a consistent ban across the board.
Lancelot.
Oh.
Morgan Le Fay. That's like the horror flick of Morgan Le Fay. No, I can't stop it. Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, no.
Morgan
So,
Naja.
Naja, right. Okay, cool. And then instead, now I can look at this. Yamoja,
Osiris
Heimdall
Pele.
locked in. Heimdall, I'm actually surprised to see. I'd have to go double check for Europe and specifically last week, but I'm pretty sure, if not 100% ban rate, well, in the first 2 sets he had 100% ban rate. He is the guy to get rid of. Yeah, you can see it right there. It's the bans in the SCC. Up to this point in Europe, Heimdall has been the #1, so him getting through is actually a really big deal. And going to the Scorpions as well. I think this is going to be one that it's great to take away from Coast. It's great to give to yourselves. Safe pick, good power, and just in this region, absolute powerhouse.
I had to look up. Q and W, the only ones we're missing. No Q gods, no W gods in our game. So we're so close. Now that we've gone through, we don't have to go through the rest of the alphabet to try.
Aggro.
Right? It's just like, hey, we need to fix this real quick. One thing that
Why'd you look it up? That was a fun game.
It was. I know.
This is Europe. We're gonna have like 7 minutes here in a second.
I was just curious to go through. I mean, you can still try and name the rest of them as they go down.
Well, I'm not gonna name all
Chernobog and then
120
Horus
guys.
actually picked up for the Highland Ravens, and the fact that Kepri's already locked in means that this Horus probably won't be going over to the support role instead. Potentially seeing some jungle out of the Horus. Could maybe even see this one go over to the Soleil. Maybe give some nods over towards Haddix from the Pro League, who is running this god over there. Runs things like the I think it's the Warrior's Axe and the Golden Blade are the 2 starts that he goes. And then kind of just pick whatever you want to go from there. Manticore Spike's good. Fabless Hoops also pretty good on that god. A lot of options available to the Horus, and then up against that, Achilles and Lancelot. And then with the Hunbats locked in, does seem that this Horus is going to be going solo.
I like Horus solo. I think that Haddix, and it was one of those questions of like, was it a Bolts thing? Is it a Haddix thing? Does it work well? When anybody else plays it, I guess we'll get to find out. But for the most part, I really like it. And you know, going back to, I think it was the first Masters, maybe earlier this year, maybe it was Worlds, something like that, talking to Ro about it, where it's like Warrior scaling into Guardian late game, like it's kind of the best of both worlds.
You get a lot of everything with Horus, and we're going to jump right in to game #1 between the Aaru Scorpions and the Highland Ravens. And we get to see kind of how this first one gets to play out between these 2 teams. Aaru Scorpions and the Ravens, both teams sitting currently undefeated moving into week #2. Who will take game #1? Well, Adapting will go ahead and pogo on the baguette as the bun hat skin makes its way across. This is just so silly to watch.
Yeah.
Does he have that on all of his, or is it just exclusive to that skin?
I think he has that emote on every one of them.
Okay. It just looks really silly
now,
with the baguette.
I think it's just a special emote. I think I can't remember if it was added with this, but it does look extra silly when it's a baguette.
I'll be honest, like I never think about that because like
that being said, I do believe baguettes as a weapon. I don't know if you felt some of those. Like you let them out, if they go stale, they are maybe the stiffest food in existence at that point.
They're dangerous.
Like you could break a tooth on a stale baguette.
You break more than a tooth.
A person's skull.
Probably break some
fingers,
break everything.
So for all of you out there in the Mafia, and you can't get a baseball bat for whatever reason, just go buy a baguette and wait 4 days.
Not the lesson you thought you'd be getting on SMITE game this early in the afternoon. I almost said morning, but it's afternoon.
It feels like it's morning somehow.
I don't know how. I woke up at like 8 a.m. this morning
Same.
for some reason. I don't know why I was up so early. I knew I had to come in for second set. Yeah, I know. That's the thing is I wasn't even here. I'm like, oh man, I don't got to be in for a little while. But nope, still up early anyways. And off early is Panvich in the solo lane. Gets a nice little lead over Kana as far as the health is concerned. The unfortunate part of Horus is his level 1, not so great. His level 2, also not really the greatest as far as like lane versus lane matchup. So once he gets that Golden Blade, that's when we kind of see that he'll have the advantage in the clear department. But as far as his poke on enemy gods, really good once he does hit that level 2.
Yeah, and I honestly think that this is going to be something that, again, with the way that they're going to play it, kind of is more than likely not going to be looking for, like, kills, I guess is the best way to describe it, right? If you get a gank over there, yes, you can get aggressive. And like you said, you've got decent clear once you hit level 2. You know, your knock-up, your capabilities to deal with the Achilles could be big, but Angry has to play careful.
Oh, one more hit. Who's got the auto? He missed him.
Boom.
Gunter missed both the autos. I think he was just out of range on the second, but definitely missed that first one. That could have been. Wait a sec. This is Hades mid. We completely went over that. We were too busy.
Oh my God.
We were too busy trying to figure out which gods we had in the game to meet the alphabet that we kind of overlooked the fact that Hades has moved over to the mid lane. The Achilles got locked in at the very end and kind of passed my mind for a moment because him and the Lancelot got locked in same time there. So Hades mid, how you feeling about it, Gore?
Hades is good right now. Admittedly, a lot of the builds that we've seen in solo haven't been like most solo lane builds. You're thinking hybrid, tanky, things like that. But after talking to some of the Pro League players about it, and specifically about like builds for them, which maybe we'll have to hold that thought if Kana can get out of here safely.
Double knockback is good. Kana does have the dash to get away. Doesn't want to probably have to use that teleport this early on, so he's got his final health potion ticking away to at least keep him a little bit sustained up. But it does seem like he's going to go back to base. Typically, you don't want to have to back this early on, especially if you're going for something like a Golden Blade Rush. He's not going to be able to have that one early up enough. Instead, he'll buy a tier 2 of the teleport before he makes his way back in.
I do like, again, maybe the pace of the game. Because if you're going to play through this, you know that it's going to be way easier to shut that down, that side of the map. Because it's Horus, early game, and a little bit he's just going to be tanky. Which kind of brings it back to the Hades in mid, which is he's been survivable without tanky items. In fact, to the point where if you have to get a tank item, most of the time, things aren't going so well for you. You're not healing enough and able to do too much. So I'm going to keep my eyes on the build here for Gunter, but I think that at least in mid, it feels like you're going to be admittedly getting, well, I was going to say less farm, but technically hit level 5 before the solo laner, so it feels good there. It feels like you're just going to be in more fights, right? You're going to have more opportunities to use your ult, more opportunities to try and get some damage. That does come with more opportunities to die or to have things turned against you. But I think that there's definitely a good area for this to work. And it's not as weird as it seems. I think it's just a little bit more comfortable in solo when you can kind of guarantee your safety. But there's also been way more solo focus from junglers lately that it's caused a lot of trouble for them.
Adapting, forced out of his blink after being hit by the Riptide from Preds and ult from from Rapio, coming through on that Lancelot. So still not level 5 for adapting, and losing the blink means that's his easiest form of initiation, because typically if you get that blink and you have a god that's also got another dash or leap, use the blink to get in, the leap to get yourself out, or maybe go for some extra gap chase. But adapting not having that means it's not going to be the easiest initiation for him, or at least not the safest one for him, should he decide to make a push towards this mid lane fight.
Yeah, I think they're... Honestly, I don't know what to expect from the Hunbats. At least in a lot of high-level play, and adapting is going to fit this to a T. Most of the time, it's farm. Even when you hit level 5, maybe you see an early Fear No Evil. Maybe you see a little bit of aggression, but even then it's farm. I think, you want more items online for him. You want to get the Jotuns as fast as possible to try and get that cooldown available. I think we saw someone, might have been Twig, go for like a Relic Dagger, I believe, the other week, just to have that blink on a lower cooldown so you could very consistently bring that blink ult combo into the fray for your team. But I do think that there's a little bit of just kind of hurry up and wait for adapting here. And that's where a lot of this team comp screams to me, right? If you look over towards the Scorpions, they scale well, and honestly, like early game, having the aggression that they have, you can start getting hands-on, I think, on the right-hand side of the map pretty early. But when I look at the Heimdall, with the way we've seen Hades, I'm starting to think 12 minutes in is when you can really start to maybe step forward. You'll hit that mid-game mark, be pretty solid for your team. But then it's late-game team fight, central, right? I mean, Scorpions look really good in late-game team fights. Ravens look phenomenal in a late-game team fight. And so I think the Scorpions could easily take an early lead, dial it up to 11, and try to find it. It's going to be right-hand centered if they do. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens recognize the pace of the game that they're at and just kind of try to keep it here, more or less.
Teleport back in from Kana. He does have that Golden Blade finished up, so it'll be good clear for him, and really solid poke up against Panvich, too. Immediately come back to lane, putting his opposition down to half HP. And it actually won't be a Jotun start from adapting. Typically, when we see these Hunbats come back in, you get the Jotuns because that Fear No Evil is such a long cooldown. Instead, opting towards a little bit of anti-heal to try and deal with what Gunter will eventually be building up into, and also the fact that there is a Umoja out there, even Achilles some self-sustain. But curious that it isn't the Jotun's first item.
It's one of those things, because like Brawlers isn't necessarily an item that I'm like, oh my god, you're building it on Hunbats? It's just... Really, over Jotuns? That's the one that catches you off guard, right? Like, it would not have surprised me if it was delayed just one item. But I guess it does make sense in the same way that you were highlighting it just now, right? If you're going into a 3v3, and that 3v3 is Lancelot, Hades, Umoja, you're not going to kill anybody. One's got phenomenal disengage, and the other two have enough healing and shielding and peel that there's not much you can really do against them. And so go for the anti-heal. Try to deal with some of that immediately. You're not going to have a Divine Ruin from Angry. Normally, that's where you'd be getting that anti-heal in this mid-matchup. So instead, place that on to Adapting to be the one to kind of lead the way for. You've got Khepri for setup. And that's assuming you were going to try and fight over the next few minutes. If you're not even looking for the fight, which, again, I think Adapting would not mind just farming, then in, 2 minutes, you're going to get a Jotun's Wrath anyway, and you're going to be in the exact same spot you would have been if you had gotten it first.
Well, it has been a very slow-paced early game as far as action is concerned, because there really hasn't been much of any. Solo laners slapping each other around a little bit. Mid laners getting a little close call a couple times there. Gunter almost finding a first blood a few minutes back. But since then has been very quiet across the board. But that very quiet has so far been able to net the Aaru Scorpions, about a 500 gold lead, up over the Highland Ravens to kind of start things out. I think Angry has been about a half level down to Gunter, Adapting maybe about a half level up or down to Rapio as well, as far as that area is concerned. But as this game continues to go, you were kind of talking about some of the benefits and kind of how the scaling affects the Aaru Scorpions maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's something they're going to have to worry about. Maybe worry about some ganks as well. This is what the Emoja brings, and unfortunately for them, it's a Chernabog on the other side, right? So he can just kind of choose to disengage, but he might not even make it out.
Fear no evil, does hit Gunter, waiting to see if he's got that dash. Instead, he goes for the Pillar of Agony, but it's only going to be him in Agony instead, as Angry picks up first blood for the Highland Ravens.
I mean, look, that's a good kill to get, and you get it on the mid laner. Look, we've been seeing Yu Huang in the SBL kind of sparingly, and I like seeing him on the right hands. I think Angry here is the right hands. Get Angry off to a decent lead, kick things off well. Yeah, Adapting's behind by a level, but who cares, man? If you're going to have this follow-up damage and this follow-up pressure from the Yu Huang. A lot of control that comes out of this god, right? You've got a root already, but it's really been this dueling dragons. The way players have adapted to hit it, very similar to what Aggro had said way back when it was, first released, which was you're not looking for damage. You're not, although the damage is nice. You're not looking for that first, the dragon that's next to you, ignore that guy. He doesn't matter. It's the guy on the other side. The dragon staring you down, you want to pull people in, and once that's kind of become the commonplace, it's become so much better because most of these people and players are aiming it exactly like that, into a Phoenix Fire, into a nice root, some sort of lockdown. And so you get that. Now you have the Divine Ruin, so you've got even more anti-heal online. I think this is going to be a very good start for the Ravens. I don't necessarily expect there to be a ton of blood. We're not going to go up 6-0 in the next 2 minutes. But I do expect that Angry will be a pressure point they can lean on happily.
And Angry has always been a player, and I preach this every time I get a chance to talk about him, because when he's making plays like this, how can you not talk about Angry? Yanks Gunter back in with the Dragon, sets up for Adapting to knock him down. And Rapio goes in, a pull onto Preds.
Yeah.
Preds will be fine. He is Umoja, does have Riptides, but this is what I was talking about. Years back when Angry kind of first jumped into the scene, players weren't giving him the same credit that he definitely is getting now. He would go ignored in team fights. He'd go ignored through the early game. And this guy would go 2 or 3 and 0 for a game and have 40,000 damage by the end. You're just going, where did all that come from?
Yeah.
It's because people have just been ignoring Angry.
And it was always the glory, right? Because it's a very easy trap to fall into, is the KDA trap, right? If he's 3-0, but the other guy's 7-0, that's more dangerous to deal with.
Gunter out. Vaporish Coast in. And that'll get the joust away from Rapio, so he'll use that to get back under the tier 1 tower and back to safety. But that's kind of maybe a telling sign of maybe either the confidence or the state of the game right now for the Scorpions is there were 3 of them who managed to find silence inside the River's Rebuke, and they didn't do anything to him.
Yeah, and I mean, you get Silent Salt, so that feels like it's pretty big of a win, but you have to be able to take it with a grain of salt, especially when they're getting this aggressive, barely able to escape there for Davey. I think that the Scorpions, like you said, I like seeing them play aggressively, even though the Ravens, I think, confidently dealt with it. I think better now for the Ravens to showcase, not only did we deal with your River's Rebuke, we don't even care that you got some pressure. You forced an ult, we're less safe now. We're still going to play aggressively, start up a purple buff that maybe admittedly doesn't get finished, things like that, that then can really culminate into a small lead that so far they've been doing a good job of maintaining.
Highland Ravens, 2,000 gold. We're down earlier in the on, but after that first blood, and then from that point on, it's been a steady climb in their favor for golden XP. Although, at least for adapting, still a little bit behind Rapio in that regard. Most of that lead coming a little bit over from the solo lane, a little bit from the dual lane. Hunter and Solo, both about a level up over their opposition. I'm curious as to where Kana will go with his build. Some decent magic damage on the opposite side between the Hades and having the Emoja there. But Kana's still not opting for a true magic defense item just yet. Instead, went for the breastplate immediately after the Golden Blade. So heavy CDR, at least for this horse, to make sure he can get the most value out of his kit.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep my eyes on him because a lot of it is going to be small bits of healing, right? You're competing with a Hades. Admittedly, like the team heal on Hades is like more difficult in Conquest to apply than like an Assault game because you're way more spread out. Not everybody's going to group up on like minions or anything. So I think that's going to be a little more self-focused. But you still got a Yemoja, right? So you've got a lot that's going to be going on right there. You've got the Horus, very similar to a Hades in the sense that it's not super well spread out in terms of that heal. But you are going to be able to have some healing available to you, right? And then you have the hi-rez as well. So I like the idea that Kana is going to try to get all of that utility up as much as possible. Even ignoring the heal, though, my favorite part of the kit has to be the stun. Prot Shred that comes in for Kana, a lot of work for him.
Solo kill for Coast. One more auto will do it. And he will be able to take down his opposition in Davey on the left side all by himself. Had backup from adapting just in case, and now the backup needs to be there for Preds. Rooted in place by two different targets, pulled back by Silence. Has the beads to get away for now. Gunter trying to be able to pull it back in with the Pillar of Agony, but a double dash out from Vapor's Coast will make sure that he does not go down to the mid laner instead of maybe adapting. Who goes down to the enemy team instead, goes through. Dueling Dragons, don't find anything. And the Highland Ravens get away with their one kill, and everybody else is just fine.
Look, and low, admittedly, relics used, right? You're missing now your Blink, your beads, if you're Rapio Preds, and then Davey there in that order. On the other side, though, you're going to be missing an Aegis. You're missing Beads Aegis if you're Coast. This is a good spot for the Scorpions, right? Again, maybe not necessarily gold-wise or even experience-wise if you look at some of the listings, but I do think that relic-wise, they're going to have a lot of opportunities. In the jungle, they're going to be able to deal with a more telegraphed Hunbats for the next 100 seconds. And then a lot easier to kill is the Chernobog and now the Yu Huang, especially with the hi-rez down. And so I want to see this shift in focus onto kills, specifically from Rapio. Try to find a mid laner, try to find the carry, and just put him into an uncomfortable position because I think this is a really, really good spot to turn around.
Beads from adapting. That fear was about to push him under the tier 1 tower. And maybe some extra follow-up could have come from Preds from that one. So now with the beads gone from adapting, the blink still down. Might be a little bit of time before we see the Hunbats make his way into one of these team fights. But I think, as far as the mid is concerned, it feels like it's so difficult for Rapio to even try and find an opening on Angry. I mean, level 14 to 14 in that regard, but I mean, it's a Yu Huang. We always talk about, you know, making sure that you have one of the safest mid laners that you can, you know, safety and hunters and things in that regard. Yu Huang might be the safest mid laner to have just because of his ultimate, giving him CC immunity, and his third ability as well, that's Celestial Flight, giving him just so much time that he can buy for his team to show up.
Yeah, I think this is going to be something that they have to work a lot around. I almost forgot about neutral objectives. More of in the sense that it feels like, I don't know, that they should be like on the forefront of our minds. But neither of these teams has gotten like so far away with something that starting up a Pyromancer or a Gold Fury is really like easily feasible. Pyromancer probably the more likely of the two. Gold Fury going to take a little bit longer to try and lock down. And then it also comes back to this, and we had to deal with this in Game 1 today as well. You've got a lot of kill capability onto objectives, burn opportunities. Not a whole lot of secure as you would know it in a traditional sense, right? I mean, you've got some good high damaging abilities, but maybe not a ton that are going to like guarantee something goes your way. So I think everything in this qualifies as a 50-50. We're going to start having to look at confidence of pulls, but also just team fights, right? I think that if you've got Fear No Evil, you've got a Capri behind you, you feel a little more confident in your team fight, period. And so I think that the Ravens might have a small advantage around objectives, but not because of any of the normal reasons you would think.
We did get a Pyromancer by the Ravens just moments ago. Adapting started that one up, and then Silence and Connor rotated in to make sure that he didn't die to it and make sure that they could secure it. The Highland Ravens, or I should say, our Scorpions able to confirm Trebuchet for themselves. That'll give them some help, and maybe some much-needed help on the left side, as the Oracle Harpies are dropped as well. Means Gold Fury has the vision for the Scorpions. If they could find the Highland Ravens slip in, maybe catch one or two that go back to base, could be an easy pull for the Scorpions to try and go for the objective play.
Yeah, I think that they have a small advantage with the backs that were coming out, but like you said, very difficult. Could be the thing that evens the game out, though, right? If you're looking at the Ravens right now, that's a small gold lead, but a gold lead nonetheless. 3 kills. Very confident as we get to this late game mark. And that's where things can get iffy. I think that in the two of them, the later the game goes, I personally prefer the Ravens draft. And so that's where things, again, execution on field can change that. I think that the Scorpions have good capabilities for it. But so far, we didn't see it in the early game when their draft, in my mind, was a little stronger. Now it's going to be the question of can they make that work? Executes are going to be important. Kills, healing, all that stuff.
Adapting. And Kana will both use ults just to disengage from the fight on the right side. Meanwhile, Rapio and Pavage both holding on to theirs. So it'll be a dual advantage for them should another fight break out. Rapio will just try and get some poke. Like Prez is getting over to himself by Angry. This Yu Huang, now that we are past kind of the weaker early mid stage that we know of Yu Huang, now that a few items are online, you can see the damage that it's able to do some of these tankier targets.
Yeah, I think that's something that they need to be worried about, right? I mean, even if, and honestly, Angry may be living up to it right now, right? 1-0-1, 3,000 damage higher than everybody else in the lobby, and that's with 3 kills. That's no fights. That's nothing massive. Angry could end this game 1-0-8 and have 40,000 damage. Like, it's just, one of those, making the play for the kill, but not necessarily always getting the kill. I think that Angry is definitely someone that is, well, just lurking. I was going to say in the waters, but he's not playing Sobek, so it's not really a fun joke. He's just lurking, waiting. Will have enough to be able to turn the tides of a fight in their favor.
Gold Fury started. Davey used his ult. Sends one through the realms. Gunter goes in trying to find anybody that he can, but it's only Silence on the backside of the team fight. Ward broken, so no teleport in by Kana. Davey barely makes it into the Bifrost, but Adapting has the chase down. And with the overhead slam, plus Vapor's Coast teaming up, it's not only a Gold Fury for the Ravens, but also a pick.
Yeah, I'll admit, I didn't factor that into the equation of safety of Heimdall, because a lot of it is the Bifrost, right? You can just travel any distance you want. Just increases the cooldown timer of it. But if you get out of there, Coast can just follow you. He could literally just decide to go. And so I think well played by them to keep that aggression up. And really interesting to see how well it's worked out for him. I mean, 3 levels up right now for Coast, right? The farm game over on the left-hand side has just been impeccable to make sure that Coast was a lead or ahead and has a nice, comfortable lead. You're seeing the same kind of build, so it's not necessarily manifesting as much in gold. But it doesn't really matter when you keep both your relics and you're managing to be 2-0-1, right? You're finding a lot, and Davey is just going to be unsafe for the next 2 minutes until things really kick off. It keeps the Ravens in a spot where, again, winning kind of begets winning. They can fall back and focus on whatever they want because all of the control is going to be in their favor. They get themselves a Fury. They have more gold. They have better experience in most roles. I think that we're getting to the point where with Pyromancer coming up, that's probably the next easy big jungle boss. But this should be a team that is contemplating and thinking about going for a Fire Giant play.
When did the side laners get such a massive lead? I mean, it was just about 3 levels for Coast over Davey until Davey just procced to 18. Panovich only level 18, Kana level 20. And again, it's not like there's been a ton of kills. It's not like there's been a ton of TKOs or anything that would send one of those 2 players back consistently. It's just Coast and Kana finding extra farm throughout the jungle, throughout the early fights. Sure, the 2 extra objectives do help, but I mean that's a big lead to have this early in the game. 2 levels separating your hunters, which when you now look at the build is not just a starter item upgrade, it's a starter item plus a full tier 3 versus just a base starter and tier 2. That's on the opposite side for the Scorpions. Hunter. Rapio pulled back in. Beads only get him so far. He's got to joust his way out. Preds has Riptides, and that'll be fine for him.
Yeah, I actually think this is going to be so difficult, right? If you're on the back foot like this and you're the Scorpions, unfortunate for you that the Ravens just have a little bit more control. Fabless Toops finished by Kana as well as a little bit extra with the Caduceus shield. So, like, healing priority is going in the minds of the Ravens, at least from that regard. And the anti-heal on the other side doesn't exist, right? There's no Divine Ruin, no Brawlers, no anything to try and deal with it. And again, I don't know that that's super necessary because the Ravens have none other than the Horus. But in these little moments, especially with the Fabless, the shielding, like, you have Kana essentially stepping up to make somebody else a tank while still being a tank and being able to lead the way. Plus Prot Strip inside the kit knockups. I really love the Horus pick here. All we need is like one clever use of the ult and then everything's really set. And we've already seen it used well for disengage. Especially around an FG like this, you could really play around with how your team wants to fight, who's going to go where, and what kind of surprises you can give for the Scorpions.
Ravens instead will avert their attention to some of the towers. Tier 1 and mid gone. Tier 1 and solo now also gone. Angry's going to go back to base along with Coast, so no Fire Giant for at least another minute or so while those players have to make their strides back through the jungle and make their way back to the rest of the team. But I'm kind of curious how maybe some of the team fighting will go with that. As you mentioned, no anti-heal to kind of deal with Kana's healing, which he's not going to get too many heals during a fight, but with the Caduceus shield giving him the boosty healing, and then the Fabless giving a shield along with the healing.
And then Capri just having a res.
Yeah.
And I guess technically, damage reduction on his too, which 50-50 as to whether or not you're going to be getting it. But I think it builds up the Scorpions to have just a tough job, man. I mean, you have to burn through so much damage, so much shielding, no anti-heal available. And it's very much in the regard that I think no Ankh, like we're not talking that heavy. Like a Divine Ruin maybe spliced in there somewhere, something like that. Just to give you a little bit of Brawlers wouldn't be terrible. Just to make sure that you have a smidge going in your favor to slow down and specifically stop Kana from keeping teammates alive.
Do see Coast split pushing on the left side. That will force Davey to make his hand over that direction. Now, both those Hunters, at least the benefit of the Scorpions and the Ravens, is that they can send their Hunters to split push on the left side. Now, for Coast, it costs him an ultimate to come all the way back through. For Davey, it's the Bifrost, which with that level of distance might as well be an ultimate by that point for him to be able to try and get back through. So decent split push and counter split push options for both of those teams. But as we keep pushing further in this game, Gore, as we're sitting 4-0 right now, 25 minutes in, only 2 Pyromancers and 2 Furies that have been picked up so far, all of those by the Highland Ravens. This gold lead has kind of gotten a little out of control. I mean, we're sitting 9,000 up for the Highland Ravens, still two towers on the map, so that's at least another 3K gold that the Ravens can just add for free to their pockets. And we haven't even really seen a big fight just yet.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a little scary. Like the idea, you're going into this late, you don't know what the other team's team fight is like because you haven't seen it just yet. The Fire Giants been started up. The Ravens are feeling confident in their capabilities right now.
Pull in on a Panvich. Not taking a lot of damage. Preds instead is the one who's eating a little bit more. River's Rebuke will find 3. Phantom Shell has been popped. So that way Silence can get the rest of the team out. Coast has found Rapio. And the Pillar of Agony by Gunter doesn't get a whole lot of value. Panvich in the middle of 3 in the back line. But he's got to execute out, but he can't even get there. Adapting will put him down. Preds on a quarter HP running as fast as he can on the Emoja. But the Highland Ravens will not continue to chase. Instead, with their 2 kills, they'll grab the Fire Giant.
Yeah, with the lead they have, with the kills that they've been able to pick up, they don't really care too much about being able to chase down another one, right? Because JMac, it's so wild how far they've managed to grab. The gold lead pre-Fire Giant was 10,000. No Fire Giants, no big team fights, was 10,000. And so you are only going to grow from there.
Stunned by Preds. Stunned two Preds.
Oh no!
And he doesn't even get to make it through the Riptide. Angry will put him down, as well as the right side Phoenix. Highland Ravens had that 9K plus before they started the fire. Get the fire, grab a tier 2, and we'll make it 11,000 and climbing with one tower left standing on the map. And staggered cooldown timers. Panvich just now coming back up from his respawn. And this is something that we've talked with, I think it was we talked to the SPL players about it, you know, what they kind of think about this style of play when it comes to the European region. And the one thing that I heard consistently, Gore, was, yeah, this style of play can work if you're confident, because if your first 5v5 team fight is at 7, 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in, that's not a big deal, especially if you're sitting 2,000 gold. You take your first 5v5 team fight at 25 minutes, well, all of a sudden, Fire Giants and the like all come into the question and into the equation at that point. Yeah. And the Highland Ravens are no strangers to being able to wait for these late game fights.
I mean, in this instance, it was literally, hey, you waited 25 minutes for a team fight. You lost 2 people. And that resulted in a Fire Giant, a tier 2, or 2 tier 2s, and a Phoenix. And there's still 2 minutes, a minute and a half, no, 2 minutes to work with on this Fire Giant buff, this power play that they have. And that's not factoring in the fact that by the time it ends, they'll be able to loop back and get a Gold Fury. It's not factoring in that there's still a tier 2 that they can knock down. Actually, no tier 2s left for them. Still only Phoenixes for them to go for. So you've got to mount your defense. And the last and only engage that you've had in a full 5-on-5 with these guys, you lost 2 minutes ago, right? Like, it really does feel like there's a lot of pressure on you to perform. And just to make sure that things stay as clean as physically possible for you. I just don't know that where it is. I mean, you're looking at full 6 slotted items on the right-hand side of the item box there, and you look at towards the left, and you're scrambling to even match half the time. The Ravens just have a better economy going in their favor.
Stun to Angry. We'll get him away. Celestial Flight used in order to disengage, but Phoenix has already been poked down about a third or so of its HP. And by the way, there's a Trebuchet on the way. It'll be there in about 30 seconds to join the rest of the team. And from that, the Highland Ravens can just sit here in luxury. Dueling Dragons doesn't get us what they were hoping. Rivers Rebuke will catch 2. And no, it will not, because Kana's used his ultimate to get the team out of the rivers instead. They may not even need the Trebuchet for the Ravens to take down this bird. It is already starting to fall down. It goes away with one more auto. And the Aaru Scorpions all have to disengage as Panvich and Preds both sitting low in HP, and instead the Ravens can move towards mid.
Honestly, I think the amount of pressure, I mean, this is not an enhanced Fire Giant, right? Like, this is something that they are just running with normally. They've got 30 seconds left. I mean, so much time to wiggle room that they have wiggle room with, just to kind of see, face check, vibe check the Scorpions with this Fire Giant buff.
Dash in by Gunter. See if he can get anything with it. Fear No Evil will push a couple away. Gunter is still very healthy inside that pillar, but Rapio is not. Gunter gets a heal, but that heal is not big at all. 3 down for the Aaru Scorpions. They might not even need the final Phoenix for the Ravens. They can find one more pick, maybe onto Davey. Uses the Aegis, but burned down by the Phoenix Fire after. Angry finds his 3rd kill of the game, and it'll be game number 1 going to the Highland Ravens.
Yeah, the downside of being so focused on the defense there. Fire minions pouring in right onto the Titan. Left side, there's a Trebuchet at the Phoenix line, and the only reason it didn't go into the Titan room is because you got a lucky minions wave spawn. I think that was just well played by the Ravens, right? I mean, it's very silent, slow, steady lead, even going into it, like we mentioned, without having to win virtually any fights. Pyromancers, Gold Furies, all that in their favor, 10,000 gold up. And when you start your first 5-on-5 team fight with a 10,000 gold lead, things tend to go well for you.
For the Highland Ravens, it does go very well for them. Fire Giant ends up leading to a Game 1 victory. We'll take it to a quick break, and then we'll get you guys set up for Game number 2.
But I'm not picking up tonight, cause I'm a bit too busy serving on smiles, having me a real good time with a drink full of bottles. bad for my health. Holy shit, I just stumbled. Still I'm feeling myself. Fly with the stars on free. Party all day, every weekend. Make it boom boom to the beat. Make it boom boom boom, boom boom boom. Fly with the stars on free. Party all day, every weekend. Make it boom boom to the beat. Make it boom boom boom, boom boom boom.
Welcome back to the SMITE Challenger Circuit over in the European region. The Highland Ravens, after 30 minutes of battling back and forth, able to take game number 1 over the Aaru Scorpions. And again, Gore, this is a matchup that started out very early on. No real kills started coming through till about the 9-10 minute mark or so. We saw a couple of attempts start out through.
Yeah.
But more than anything, it was just a slow bleed out by the Highland Ravens. They find a first blood. Doesn't really go much from there. Eventually, they end up getting a Pyromancer. I think it's about 16 minutes, followed by a Gold Fury a little bit later after that one. But it was 4 kills going into the Fire Giant. And there weren't very many more kills that came even before or after that Fire Giant happened. This was just a superior macro and farm play by the Highland Ravens through and through.
Yeah, and half the time, we've seen that come from Europe. If you're going to play at that pace, then you've got to be able to match their farm, right? And that's going to be a problem here for the Scorpions. It's just late game, and I said it at the end of that one, but it works out really well here. You look at this, again, 0-0, even gold, just fine. And the kills come up in favor of the Ravens, but if you think about it, kill bounties, and specifically where they're at, not that massive. This Fire Giant, they're 10,000 or 11,000 gold up. They just got that extra 1,000. They were 10,000 gold before they had that buff. Even looking in small movements, right? 2 kills up, 1,000 gold, things like that. Where I think that the Ravens were just controlling the Furies, the Primals, the farm in general a little bit more, and it wasn't egregious kills. It wasn't crazy map state. It was mostly neutral farm that they were able to just strip away from the Scorpions and get in their favor, which makes it honestly even more impressive how massive that lead got to go. And yeah, here it is where it's 4 kills up.
Yeah.
9,000 gold separating the two teams. And it's like, what are you going to do? This is your first full 5-on-5 fight, and you're going into it at a 9,000, 10,000 gold deficit. Like, they're just stronger than you on the other side.
I mean, it was 4-0 in that last highlight. That was before Fire Giant got dropped. They get 2 kills. Fire Giant, push down the right side Phoenix. It's 6-0. Get a pick on the Preds. That kind of ends that one, and I believe they end the game with only, 10, maybe 11 kills total out, at least for the Highland Ravens. And there's the sneaky damage out of Anger. He finished like 3-0-6 or 3-0-7 in his last line. Ends the game with 30,000 damage. This is what I was talking about with this guy. Back whenever nobody was paying attention to him in mid, doesn't get a high kill count, but gets tons of assists and just puts out absurd damage numbers.
You can pay attention to him. He still puts out the absurd damage
Pay attention
numbers.
to this man. Stop giving him such safe gods to perform. He was doing that kind of stuff with Merlin back in the day.
True. You gotta put some pressure on him. I think you just gotta find pressure on the Ravens in general, right? Because you cannot let this team get off to that good of a start plus that amount of gold lead before you finally step up and try and fight them.
Let's see if the Aaru Scorpions can make an adaptation to the picks and bans for game number 2 as we jump into those up against the Highland Ravens. To see if the Aaru Scorpions can drag themselves back and find their opportunity to go to a game number 3 against the Ravens. Being able to find a win here, super important for both these teams. Remember, it's a single round robin for these guys, so they only play against their oppositions one time in order to try and determine who the top teams are to make their run and their road, at least towards the World Championship stage. So it's making sure that you can find every single win. Even every single game is important, because when we get to some of the tiebreakers later on, the head-to-head matchups, every individual game that you can find up over your opposition is going to make a big deal whenever it comes down to the latter portions.
So Olarun, Pele, then we get to Q, and that doesn't happen.
Doesn't.
Ratatosker.
R, yeah, S. Scylla,
Soul,
T.
Anybody, T, Thanatos,
U. See if you remember.
Ul.
There you go. V.
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 We do have
a
god
V.
with V.
We do.
Let me think on that.
I'll take you a second.
While you get us through.
So while Gore thinks of what V god we have, I remember right off the top of my head. We have Hades, Chernobog, and Yamoja banned away. Naja, Guan Yu, and Freya. So it looks like it's the same things, minus at least the Hades. That one gets banned away by the Scorpions.
Vulcan.
Ah, there you go. I was also thinking Vamana.
Oh, I forgot about Vamana.
And then we don't have a W.
No W. William, that's me.
There you go. So you're the next god, confirmed in Smite. X, this is an easy one.
X is Xbalanque.
Y.
Y is Umoja.
Z.
Zebras.
Who?
No, who?
Zebras?
Yeah, well, zebras. Zebras start with Z.
Zebras do
Xylophone starts with an X, but it sounds like
it does. So does.
What do you want from me?
So does Xerox.
Who's the god that starts with Z? Oh, Zhang Kui.
Zhang Kui and Zeus.
Be revealed.
Okay,
we're good. We made it through the alphabet, but we don't have a W and we don't have a Q. So designers, if you're listening, next 2 gods need to be released, need to have a W or a Q to start their name so we can start completing our alphabet. Who cares about filling out all the roles and things like that? We need the alphabet. Let's go ahead, though, and round up the remaining, at least of the picks through here. Khepri, Heimdall, Merlin for the Aaru Scorpions. Yu Huang once again for the Highland Ravens. This time, Ratatosker for adapting. Last time he got this pick, he went 9-0. Went kind of crazy. We'll see if he can reprise that here in game number 2, or maybe the Aaru Scorpions can find a way to slow him down, Gore.
Yeah, I think that this is something that you've got your work cut out for you in the best way. You had a Hunbats last time, and the reason I mentioned that is because Hunbats farms. Hunbats does not get super aggressive early on. Hunbats is going to play the back camps, play for the buffs, play a little bit around mid camps. You know, Fear No Evil is a threat, but really around level 5 is the first time that you start considering him. And then it's not again for team fights, right? It's when that ult is up, things like that. Ratatosker starts at level 3, sometimes a little earlier, and then he just keeps going for a majority of the game. I think that this is given adapting capability a god that he can get very hands-on very early on, and it can really expedite things. So if I'm looking at this Khepri, your work's cut out for you. If I'm looking at this Merlin, you better stay safe. Same thing for the Heimdall, because I think this Ratatosker is going to be all over the place.
As we jump into the second wave of bans and now into the remaining picks. A couple of shots at Rapio as Fenrir and Daji are banned away by the Highland Ravens. Aaru Scorpions take Tyr and Horus off the board. And that allows for Cupid to be picked up by the Ravens to go over towards the dual lane, teaming up with Ganesh. With Lancelot and Pele for the Aaru Scorpions. So Lancelot moving out of the jungle, out of Rapio's hands this time around, now moving over into the solo, give that one over to Panvich. How do you feel about the kind of shift up in the jungle now, going from this Lancelot to the Pele for the Scorpions?
You know what? I actually like it to match the Ratatosker more than anything. Although, and you know, throwing Lancelot like over into the solo lane, I think feels really solid. I think that just making those kind of changes gives you a lot of opportunity, right? Pele, in my mind, blink ult once you have both of those. You're great. We've seen a couple of people will opt for beads instead of the blink early on. As long as you just have the ult, you'll feel fine. But like once you hit level 5, you're pretty aggressive, and you can then stick to like Yu Huang, admittedly still pretty safe, but you can kind of collapse on him. I think it gives you at least some opportunities to chase people down and cause a lot of trouble.
Well, we'll see if the Scorpions have a better start in game number 2 to see if they can find their way and make a path towards game number 3 for themselves to try and keep themselves alive for a chance up against the Highland Ravens. Or are the Highland Ravens going to sweep this one out? Let's jump right in to the game to see how these two teams are able to play this one out. Pred's getting the Khepri, taking that one away from Silence. I think it's also maybe a big factor that will help out the Scorpions. That Khepri didn't really need to utilize ult that much that game. There were very few times that we saw Preds using the ultimate where somebody was just about to die, get that lucky revive back off. It was mostly a, hey, don't hit me for a little while. I'm just going to go ahead and, scurry my way on out of here. We saw it in the mid lane skirmish where Rivers Rebuke and 3 people had surrounded Silence. He pops ultimate and just scuttles around for a little while and then walks himself right on out.
That's just the way, that's the life of like a Khepri, right? Like it's just a scuttle.
He'd just be scuttling.
He'd just be scuttling. Anyway, I'm excited to watch this one. I don't know. I'm curious about this because Preds. There wasn't a lot from the emoji last game. There was what, 2 walls that were like impactful, and one of them they just Horus ulted out of. So yeah. A lot of what the Scorpions had that was in their favor has not worked their way. But when you do look, I think at the Khepri, I think that you have it's such a weird balance. You do have a better way to be impactful in the game because I think that your ult is going to change team fights in favor of your team. You also have less impact, right? Because you don't have these massive walls. Riptide, instead, you have a pull. You've got a root. It really does go back and forth, I think, between the two. Also, he's rocking the crab race skin, so we love that. Anyway, I don't know, man. It's one of those things that I look at this draft for the Scorpions, and for every win that it has, there's something on the other side that I think causes it trouble, right? Silences from the Ganesh, from Silenced himself. Coast on Cupid, who is just a top pick right now, versus the Heimdall, who admittedly is really only showing up when Zapman is on the back foot in picks and bans, or if you're in Europe for SCC. It's the only times we see him. Then on top of that, you get a Ratatosker for adapting, who he went, 9-0 on last week?
Yeah.
Kana's on King Arthur. I think if this game goes a similar pace, or even if it doesn't go a similar pace, if adapting gets aggressive early on, much like this, you're going to start seeing the Ravens get to that same kind of lead, 9,000, but they're going to do it a lot faster. They're going to be a lot more comfortable. They're going to have a way better team fight by the end of it. So I think that the Scorpions have to play this cautiously, have to make sure this rat doesn't get out of hand. Keep up, find pressure where you can, whether it's in duo lane or right lane or mid. Just work for something in your favor.
Dash by silence there was a little questionable. I guess fortunate for him, there wasn't a whole lot of follow-up by Davey or Pred, so he had to capitalize on a potential kill, or maybe even a force of the relic from the elephant. Blue buff did get invaded by adapting and Kana. That one stripped away from Panvich, so on this Lancelot, going to be a little bit tougher to kind of keep equal as far as the farm is in that lane. Going to have to be a little bit more conservative with his abilities, so that way he doesn't run out of mana. But having that Bluestone Pendant does give him a little bit of that MP5 to try and deal with it, but losing your blue buff this early on in the game, like once you get those first couple of items online, you get your damage, you get your defense usually that's got some MP5 with it, it doesn't feel too bad, but those first like 2 spawns of blue feel absolutely horrible to lose out on as a solo laner.
Honestly, even the third one, but like the first 2, like you said, are maybe the worst, because like it's just that's your sustain, right? All of a sudden you're sitting there and it's like, well, I can't farm, or I'm having to use my teleport off cooldown. Like you just fall behind. It's just unfortunate for you. And if you're Panvich here, maybe it's not the worst case scenario. It doesn't seem like there's been a lot of fighting going on, but that's kind of what you sacrifice, right? You can clear the wave, but you have to stay under tower and you can't fight. You're never going to have pressure. You're not going to feel like you're in control of the lane at any point. And so you have to figure something else out.
Level 5 adapting. His first target is the Kepri. Does find the knockup and the stun right after. No level 5 for Preds means no revive available for the Kepri, and it'll be first blood going to the Highland Ravens jungle.
Look, I, again, just love the way that adapting is going to be playing this. That's exactly what you want. You've got a semi-global ult. That was... The only thing that made that not a Thor play is the fact that he's on Rat.
Well, never mind. He's back on the Rat once again. Made a little loop-de-loop around the Gold Fury pit and finds the other member of the duo lane, Davey, who goes down. Great play from Silencing Coast. Davey had beads during that. Not sure why he didn't elect to use that any opportunity there to maybe try and get out. But not going to save you this time around. Don't use them. Don't get us live.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's going to show up again, right? So maybe Davey's saving him for the next death. And sometimes that's an easy meme. This time your death cooldown is significantly shorter, so maybe it's trying to keep you alive. That's one of those moments that if you use them, are you truly getting out, or are you just hoping you get out? And so I'm okay with holding on to them and trying to keep them going to see if you can maybe survive that. But again, adapting made a Thor play, just not on Thor, right? Walk into the Gold Fury pit, go up into your semi-global, dunk down in the duo lane, get a kill, and then admittedly scurry back as fast as you can, and then get another kill. Yeah. Now, that one maybe a little less Thor-esque, but it does work out really well for him. And that's the style of play that adapting has always been great at, and when these gods are meta, or at least playable, it engages the Ravens in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. And, J-Mac, I'm going to point it out for you, but, 2 kills up, the gold lead's getting a little hairy, but now
dicey.
It's 6 minutes in instead of 12 minutes in, and that means a lot. Like, having it this early is not great for the Scorpions. They really need to buckle down and try to figure out where exactly they need to combat this. My mind is immediately try to get some pressure over in duo or maybe in solo, but, like, you got to find it somewhere.
Well, Coast will drop ult and will use his dash out, but unfortunately, Adapting's a little too late to save his life. Adapting will get sent through the realms, and that is a 1-for-none trade that the Scorpions are able to make.
Yeah, I like seeing Adapting make the rotation there. Unfortunate that it's just a little late. If Ghost is able to survive a little longer, if we're talking level 12 and Aegis is up, then I think that play turns around. But the Ravens fall down. And actually, that's, again, small moments like that, but that matters so much to me, mainly because it means the Scorpions are not going to get blanked this set.
Do have purple buff. Not successfully invaded by the Scorpions. It does get saved by the Ravens. So that way Vapor's Coast won't lose out on his buff. He'll at least get to head back to lane and get a little bit of luxury towards himself. But getting a kill up, at least for the jungler, for Rapio, maybe getting the assist over towards Davey, will help out in that duo lane significantly. They definitely needed pressure somewhere, and I think you called it perfectly, making that rotation towards duo to at least get the Aaru Scorpions on the board and to be able to give them something to try and mitigate some of this gold lead that the Ravens have built up.
Yeah, you gotta stem the bleeding, right? Figure out where things are falling apart and try to get aggressive on it. Things like that, right? Go for mid camps, fight them where you can. Pyromancers really start to enter the conversation in 2.5 minutes. If you're the Scorpions, you got Merlin Burn, man. Yeah, I think actually working with that is maybe the best case scenario for you. Not a lot of secure on either side, but having that burn and then being able to combine it with, I mean, honestly, as much as I hate to say this, maybe combining it with a Pele ult, right? So you have that burst at the end to be able to find the guaranteed kill, or burst from Davey. We've seen what a Heimdall can do in the right circumstances. It's small damage, but, good enough that you can get something from 500, 600 down to 0. And so I want to see them get that level of aggressive just to make sure they can keep things going. Unfortunately for them, that level of aggression just keeps happening at them.
Yeah, Preds will pop the revive. He's going to go ahead and get that one to pop itself. Had just enough time left on the timer, but it's a Pele ultimate to the backline by Rapio. Up on the tree is adapting. Preds,
he's going to go back in.
Maybe an easy target, but Gunter's separated from them. And adapting will not go back into the team fight. I was thinking maybe the same. He would try and get a quick dunk onto Preds, get some quick damage, but instead adapting to hold on and back out for now.
Yeah, there were 3 people behind him. I was thinking it was either a dunk on Preds and him get quick damage, dash out, or a dunk on Gunter and isolate the Merlin. But Flicker's still available. It was that conversation and probably comms of, yeah, we're not going to get a kill here. Like, if anything, you're probably just going to die. So let's play safe. Let's play careful. Pull back. Got a nice, again, a very comfortable lead for this early on. Let's just keep pushing the way that they have been. And I think that losing small neutral camps doesn't mean too much when you're invading regularly, forcing Scarab's Blessing, things like that. So Ravens, once again, are the ones who are coming out on top. It's a small play. It's defensive play nonetheless, but they're more than fine to keep things going this way.
Preds will actually manage to steal one of the offerings away and get a fully stacked Obelisk. So now Trebuchet goes to the Scorpions. They've been on top of at least making sure to get the Trebuchets. In game number 1, the first couple of them did go over to the Scorpions. Wasn't until the late game when the Ravens were able to pick up one for themselves and send it down the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So we know that at least in that farming regard, the Scorpions have been able to keep up. It's just been mostly around these neutral objectives, things like the Pyromancer, the Gold Fury, even some of these greater Scorpions. We saw the Ravens steal one of them away just earlier on. It made it a little bit difficult for the Scorpions to be able to keep their pacing up in that regard. Finding the one little pick, finding these little small windows of opportunity, it's what the Scorpions need, because they have been able to slow down the Ravens. Remember, this was 2,000, 2,500 gold 6 or so minutes into the game, and it's since then plateaued for the last about 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, at least kind of capping them off a little bit, but they've still managed to slowly gain, right? But like you said, like that, the level of increase over the first 6 minutes versus over the last 4 has been greatly stemmed. And part of that is going to be gameplay. Part of that is thanks to the Scorpions, and I think stepping up and causing trouble, right? Taking mid camps, at least on left. I think that's the second time I've seen Gunter go for those and get them. I want to see more plays like that. Now, honestly, I'd love to see more proactive nature just in general, right? You've got one kill. Go for another. Go for these invades. Try to get more going for your team just to make sure that you can put yourselves in a better position to win. Find the experience, find the gold, and find your openings for a W.
Purple buff invade by Rapio, and Davey goes successful. Angry will make sure to secure the green buff. Root pull by Preds doesn't go anywhere just because the root from Angry managed to lock him down. So that kept pull effectively doing nothing except for just holding silence in place for just a moment. Red buff invade looks like it did go the way of the Scorpions. They'll pull the Gold Fury. Coast is here. Fields of Love available to no, it's not available to Cupid. But I'm not sure if the Ravens just didn't recognize that that wasn't available, or if they just decided that the threat of Cupid was enough to keep them away from the Gold Fury. Just the threat of it maybe being up.
And they should know with where they're at that the Fields of Love was not available. So maybe it's a miscommunication. Maybe they don't remember the timer. Maybe something falls apart. Maybe, like you said, Cupid's kind of scary. Maybe they don't want to risk it. Instead, they don't get anything, and the Ravens still manage to walk away with an objective. So maybe the worst case scenario for you in general. You didn't pull an ult. You didn't get an objective. Your gold lead is still spiraling out of control. A lot more work, I think, still need to be done for the Scorpions to be able to find their way back into this. And I don't know, little moments like that, J-Mac, have me losing slight bits of hope.
It's always that, draw the line in the sand moment. Where do you take that stand? Even if Cupid ult is up at that time, force it out, everybody back away, start it back up again. Maybe try and see if he even has the ult. I mean, at least from our perspective, I thought he had ultimate up right away, and then I look over, I go, no, that diamond isn't filled up just yet.
Now I'm kind of curious as to what he used it on, because there's a good chance that none of the Scorpions, like, what if he just threw it on, like, a wave or a buff?
And nobody knew.
And nobody saw it. Like, he just did it for clear, and then Coast rotates in. They're like, oh, Fields of Love, let's just get out of here. And Coast, like, had the best poker moment of his life.
This guy's sitting on like a 2-4 in hand. He's running a 4 high going into the river. Meanwhile, they're sitting on like full house, like, yeah, no chance that he's got anything better. But wait, maybe he does, because he's willing to go all in here. Like, what's going on? But they force Costa, yeah, running a 4 high at the end of that one. Zillions coming out on top. No Gold Fury there. Kind of pulled back by Preds. Pushed back by Panvich. No chance this King Arthur gets out. There are 4 people on this side of the map. Highland Ravens, gotta imagine they go for something. How is Kana still alive all this while? He'll go through the tower, uses his 2 dashes. Are you kidding me? He could not get out of here. Thank goodness Rapio's going in to stop this one. Because that was criminal, the fact that Kana lived through 4 people and made the pathing for as long as he did to live.
And honestly, what's still criminal is how much they had to invest to get him because he lived so long, and how much you get a small win if you're the Scorpions, and yet you still lose so much in the process, right? Like, you finally get something that goes your way. But at the end of the day, the trade's just worse for you.
Silenced. Has shell, so will not die to the fire. Root and the Dawn After is good enough
you gotta, okay.
by Preds. So 2 picks for the Scorpions. Gold Fury for the Highland Ravens. Technically with the net, that still does come up positive for the Ravens, even despite losing those 2 people.
I mean, again, it's really interesting to see. It's a very steep, like, deep downhill climb into the 2,000 mark, and then a slow, steady raise to 3K, and then a slow, steady raise to 4K. I mean, to the point where now you're looking at it, and with the Tier 1 tower and a little bit of fight back, you're finally pulling it right into that 3K mark again. But that's the real and kind of true danger I'm seeing right now for the Scorpions, is that, you're getting small wins, and your small wins are barely denting what the Ravens have been able to do macro-wise. One of your small wins is Kana playing up kind of obnoxiously, right? Like, it's not even like a great play that the Scorpions made as much as it is that the Ravens gave them a golden opportunity for it. And so I think that they are going to be desperate. I mean, things like that, you got to be able to look at them, you got to be able to find them, you got to be able to clean it up quicker to make sure that things like that are a little more secure for you, right? You're lucky that you get silence at the end of the Fury, but you're unlucky because of everything else that happens in the game.
Rapio's got a revive. That allows him to get away from adapting. Probably the only reason that he gets to live through the fight against adapting. Adapting's got the tree. He'll jump back down, help clear out the Harpy camps, I should say, and still keep the Highland Ravens going. Even with that Tier 1 tower going into Scorpions in mid, will they still helping out there in that regard? Fields of Love will catch out Davey, and he'll be mez for quite some time. Gives Coast plenty of opportunity to go ahead and just farm up elsewhere. Mid Harpies will go to the Ravens. And again, these slow little wins, an Oracle Harpy set here, a mid Harpy there, is allowing the Ravens to keep building this lead back up. It was 4,000, then they lost about 1,000 of it, and then it's just climbed right back down to the 4K.
Yeah, I like the pressure from the Scorpions in mid. They get that Tier 1 tower. They find a couple of invades and strip some objectives away. Or, sorry, not even objectives, buffs. And then it all falls apart again, right? It's just this opening. They can't step up to the Ravens in a way that makes them feel concise. They're lucky that they've got this Khepri pick on their side, because otherwise I think that we'd be looking at 6 kills up for the Ravens at this point, just by sheer lead from where they've been able to find picks. Some of those that just haven't happened, Preds, I think now, and Rapio, who have been able to survive because of that. So that's 2 guaranteed. But I think those 2 kills each probably get at least 1 to 2 more per fight, because the Ravens could just kind of steamroll forward and keep rolling for it. Now, though, you're entering very similar conversations we had the last game. It's 17 minutes into this game 2. Pyromancer's up, Fire Giant's up, you're going to be looking at a Gold Fury and 1 minute 40 seconds. You have to decide, if you're the Scorpions, when you're going to go for one of these, because you're looking at team fights right now that are as even as they're going to get at this pace. The way the game has been going, the way that things have been shaking up, and the way Game 1 went. If you don't take a fight now, when you finally choose one, you're going to be down 10K.
Well, here's the chance. Maybe a kill onto Adapt. No, the Dragons will push Rapio away from the Ratatosker. Maybe it can be Davey to find that first opportunity with a Heart Bomb on top of him. He will not continue his push in. No Pyromancer taken, that at least delayed the Ravens from going for the objective. Instead, they tried to take the team fight in mid. And it comes out as 0 for 0. Nobody goes down, but a lot of ultimates used across the board.
A lot of ults used. Not as many relics that maybe matter as much, at least on the left-hand side. Scorpions, Rapio's going to have the beads back in a second, and that's the only thing that was missing. You do get beads out of adapting, right? Beads down there for the Ratatosker. CC immunity still available in the ult, so maybe it's not that big a deal. Not a lot of just choice engage from the Scorpions either, right? Like, being able to just choose a fight for them is way more difficult. Did the Scorpions just steal that?
Would appear so. Nice little spike back up. Aaru Scorpions take away the Pyromancer, and now have found that opportunity to try and keep themselves back in this game a little bit, little by little. But
do that again.
But again, the problem that we found with the Scorpions earlier is they're able to find these picks. They got 2, lost out on a Gold Fury. They find a tier 1 tower, that's good. They find an invade, kill a Greater Scorpion, that's good. But then once it comes down to the remainder of their farm, it's the Highland Ravens who are finding everything else across the map. They're the ones finding an extra 1,000 gold out of nowhere when no kills are happening, no objectives are being taken. And so for the Aaru Scorpions, I got to wonder, where do they take the first real fight? Because it does lead back to what we talked about last game, what you were talking about earlier, of we're approaching 20-plus minutes in the game. Too many deaths here. Could be a Fire Giant, could be a Phoenix if those were available. At least could just be 1 kill. Rapio used the beads on the dunk, but not going to do too much. Damage is too great from adapting.
Yeah.
And the rest of the Scorpions gotta bail out. A Heart Bomb on Davey won't stun him out. It'll do some decent damage to force him away.
Yeah, the engage for the Ravens, while it might be a little more sporadic, at least is going to be a lot more consistent. And getting a kill like that onto the jungler over here, unless Preds is going to make another absolutely insane, it happened with the Kepri 2 last time.
Don't let it happen. Okay, Ravens do get the Gold Fury. Prez loses his life. Panvich is here and could cause problems along with Gunter, but it's 2 versus 4. Dash is down for Panvich. He'll go back in on Coast, gets the dash from the Cupid. The Highland Ravens got their objective. Maybe they get a little more, like an ultimate from the Lancelot. That one is now down for the soul laner of the Scorpions.
Yeah, no, I think you're feeling pretty good if you're the Ravens after that fight. You burn a lot of relics, you burn ultimates that you otherwise wouldn't have burned down. Gunter stays safe, and that's something that has been a little problematic for them. The burn from the Merlin can definitely cause some trouble. Then you look at the damage charts. Merlin's not crazy high up on that list, so you're maybe not too worried about him specifically. You keep your gold going in your favor, kind of pull back that deficit from losing the Pyromancer. And now we're talking about team fight 5-on-5s going into Fire Giant, right? Like, I mean, we can just ignore farming. We can ignore a lot of it outside of the gold lead itself. A lot of this is going to be cool. Who's got the better engage? Who's got better counter engage? And where's it all going to come? What's it all going to culminate into? And I think the answer to both of those is probably the Ravens. They get engaged on. You can fall back. You've got a silence to kind of slow things down. Angry with Roots. Good CC for disengage. Maybe you have to drop a Fields of Love, and that's like your worst-case scenario. Maybe Dharmic Pill or something like that. And then re-engage. You've got Adapting's ult. You've got Kana kind of leading the way for you. So I think that they've got the counterpunch. I think they've got regular engage because of the things I had highlighted. All of those ults and more can be used to kind of pick a fight with the Scorpions. They've got the gold lead, and they've got the item lead because of that. So I think they've got a lot more room to kind of flex around with and use that power to just clear out around the Fire Giant, right? Maybe it's not going to be an outright we can just win it, but it is going to give you a lot of opportunities to pick a fight, make the Scorpions feel uncomfortable, or lose an objective.
Maybe find a kill. That one for adapting. 4-0-1 on the Ratatosker. The unfortunate beads by Panvich. Those will be down for another 2.5 minutes. as the Highland Ravens don't need a 5v5 team fight. Start getting some pressure on the right side, maybe. Look over towards this mid. We do see Davey with split pushing left, got the tier 1 tower. That gives the Ravens at least a little bit of know-how as to where the Hunter was now that he's disappeared from the map. No clue where he could pop up at any given moment. With Coast here in mid, tier 1 tower under threat. With even just a couple of minions, they can make their way in. Could give some chance, but good clear by Gunter. One of the hardest things to do is try and push into a tower against the Merlin. So much safety and so much range on this mage to make sure to clear minions out.
I gotta keep looking at team fights, man. I think that at this point, or maybe, I mean, if you can find an isolated pick with Breads and he can lock someone down.
So you need a team fight to be able to look at real quick. Because we haven't really gotten one.
Good point. We got one last game.
2, maybe? I think we got 2.
You could call it 2.
We got 2, but like nobody died in one of them.
We got 2 last game. None this game.
No.
8 kills in 23 minutes, J-Mac.
To be fair, we were at 6 kills in like 26 last time. Actually, no, we were at 4. We were at 4 going to a 26-minute Fire Giant push. It was 10 kills total, I think, that ended the game.
And let me tell you, Ravens don't have any reason to be searching for kills. They're getting the gold lead in their favor anyway. I mean, admittedly, I think they'd do a lot better. If they get like 2 kills right here, right now, without having to worry about a team fight, that's a free Fire Giant. You probably just win the game at that point. If you're the Scorpions, you really need to be looking for picks and fights to try and get the Ravens back down to your level.
Here's the team fight that we need. Pred's at half HP. Panvich goes to the back line, finds the root onto 1. Coast now without his relics as he dashes away, still holding on to the beads. But the Dragons don't find anything from Angry this time around. Adapting, leaping around the tree, will dump back to the remainder of his team. Fire Giant pulled by the Aaru Scorpions. Still a couple of ults available to them. Stun onto 1. Dash out by Kana. Pull onto Silence. The Elephant will dash away, and a Fields of Love might catch just Preds this time around. But the health bars on the Aaru Scorpions looking a little worse for wear. Same for the Ravens. Silence and Adapting cannot continue forward.
I think that's, again, good to stall out the Scorpions from the Ravens. And good from the Scorpions to not end up in a fight where, admittedly, while it looked like they were in a good spot, right? Silenced, Adapting, lowish on health before they back and heal up. It doesn't feel like it's going to go perfectly your way, and you can't really guarantee anything like that. I think it's a good opportunity. Burn those relics. Keep yourselves with a leg up. You got beads there for Coast, and you got the Aegis there for Angry. And otherwise, you're rocking a very comfortable lead in terms of relic control. 3 pairs of beads still up for the Scorpions, plus the Trebuchet, admittedly now dealt with, but was pushing over there on left. A little bit of poke on that tier 2. Anything that gives you some sort of map advantage is going to be a big win. And unfortunately, it's just the Ravens one step ahead almost every single time. They get a Fury that goes in their favor. They're not taking the fight. No Fire Giant has been started up by the Scorpions because no one has the secure strong enough to guarantee an objective like that. And so even in a 5 versus 3, you're not able to make the big power move that your team could use to really kind of level this out and knock down those towers, get the gold back to even, put you back in the spot where you're maybe winning this game.
So our first full team fight of the game comes up as a net wash in kills. 0 going to either of those 2 teams, but it's the stuff that came after that fight that went to the Ravens. I mean, before it started out, they grabbed a Pyromancer. Now they've grabbed themselves another Fury. And suddenly the Highland Ravens, who were at 4,000 gold and kind of stagnating for a while, have pushed up a 7K gold lead. And in that last little team fight, a lot of opportunities to maybe have found a kill. I mean, Silence gets the full duration pull back by Preds into 3 or 4 different players, but Kana's there to play gatekeeper for his team. Adapting, always a threat with the Ratatosker, and Angry, who kind of went untouched during that fight in the latter portion. And then also got a shout out to Vapor's Coach drops a Field to Love on 4 people right after that pull goes through. Might have been the real reason that nobody ends up going down there, but our Scorpions' attention kind of divided in these team fights.
Yeah, it's just so difficult to choose where you want to go. Because, again, counter-engage from the Ravens is still really solid. Like, if you decide to go in on any individual, there's so much peel, so much to control it that I think it's going to be difficult. Plus, again, at this point, the gold lead's just ballooned out of your control. And, you know, you're choosing a fight. It just feels like it's almost too late.
Starting a fight with Preds at quarter HP might not be the call. At least for the Aaru Scorpions. His revive will get procced on just himself. Panvich trying to dash out as he's already expended his ult to get in, and so has Rapia, who is just gone. Dragons will get the beads away from Davy. A dunk in by Adapting Gunter. No beads available. Does get at least the stance changed to back him away, but that will not keep Vapor's coast off of him, who finds the second and now third kill of the fight. That one goes to Angry.
Honestly, they're in a weird spot where you could probably forego this Fire Giant and try to knock down towers. I like this way better. Pick it up, use the next 40 seconds that you have without 2 members of the Scorpions, 30 without 3, and just absolutely demolish their side of the map. I mean, this is what you've kind of cultivated up to at this point, right? This gold lead gets you a Fire Giant, gets you towers, gets you a Phoenix very easily because of this fight. And so there's not much they can do. Normally, we're talking about defenses. I don't know if I want to see a single soul step up to the Phoenix here. I think that you will, if you're Preds or Panvich, just die in most of those regards. And so in a rare instance, it's almost worthwhile to just give it up, because otherwise you're just staggering it out for your team and you won't be able to get a full 5-on-5 again.
Bro, I'm getting the wildest sense of deja vu from game 1 to game 2. It was a 9,000 gold lead before the Fire Giant, game 1. About an 8,000-9,000 gold lead before Fire Giant, game 2. They take Fire Giant. They take right side tower and Phoenix. And instead of only one tower left standing, which was the only tier 1, the tier 2 in mid last game, now there's a tier 2 in dual lane as well. And now we're at a 10,000 plus. This is literally just a repeat almost on the exact same time frame too. It was a 28-minute Fire Giant in game number 1. It's a near 28-minute in game number 2. They're literally just repeating the game with a different roster.
Look, I'm going to give it to the Ravens. At least they're consistent.
That's consistency,
right?
there.
Like, look, if I can go into a
now
Ravens game
like
and tell you, hey, nothing's going to matter for the next 28 minutes except they're going to farm real hard, and then, and then they're going to get a Fire Giant and win, that's the kind of consistency we need to see.
They did it with at least twice the amount of kills this time, though. Last time it was 0-4 going to Fire. This time it was 3-5 going to Fire. So one more kill for the Ravens. Scorpions actually got some kills, so good for them on that one. But unfortunately for the Scorpions, again, they fell into the trap of we're going to wait 25 minutes plus before we finally take a full team fight. The team fight doesn't go their way, but it doesn't go against them either, as far as the first one is concerned. And then second one goes through, and that one goes much worse. And now you lose Fire, you lose a Phoenix, and you got to defend up against the Highland Ravens. Only thing they're missing as a perfect repeat was a Trebuchet in left. Now instead it's a Trebuchet in mid. This really is just a repeat of game number 1.
And I've got bad news for the Scorpions, because I remember how game number 1 ended, and
it wasn't good.
Was not great for them, at least. For the Ravens, they were loving it. It is very much like you said, right? You have to deal with an extra tier 2 here. Boo-hoo if you're the Ravens. That means more gold in your pockets. Gold Fury is up, but this is a precariously similar map state, man. I mean, they are playing the game the same way, and those Scorpions just let them, right? Early on, they just kind of allowed it. They got a couple of kills this time, but they haven't done too much to really stymie the bleeding. And even here, Trebuchet in mid, plus a distraction, plus the Fire Giant. This could be the fight they finally need out of the jungle, but it's not going to work out for them.
Now Adapting, able to get up onto the tree just in time. He'll dunk back in and get a little bit sustained back in the jungle with himself, as mid Phoenix will be fine now. Trebuchet has been dealt with. Heart Bomb will proc the revive onto Davy just in time for him to get back to Preds. But this time the Ravens don't really have the same push power on the Phoenix that they did in game number 1. So it'll at least be stopped for the time being. 30 seconds left on Fire Giant buff before the Ravens may need to pack up and head out.
Yeah, it's time kind of playing against them. Last time with 30 seconds left, they were able to get something done. Adapting's, resurged in terms of health. Has a minion wave in mid. And so get a little aggressive for them. They might be able to split the difference here. Keep things going in their favor. I think that's where a lot of the pressure is going to be. It's difficult, a pre-EFG surging into Phoenixes, sieging into Phoenixes is just hard, right? And so it's something like to have right already, you're feeling pretty confident about that. To do what they did last game, that was just really good on them, right?
Yeah.
To have that amount of pressure to be able to convert it to that. I think that they've got to be able to split the difference in a very beautiful, comfortable manner here. And with the timer that they're playing against, I just don't know that they're going to be able to do it. Instead, fall back, grab the Gold Fury, strip the jungle if you can on the way through of anything you didn't already strip, maybe. It's the purple buff only. But just get yourself something even more in the lead. What is that, 15,000 gold, quick maths?
That's a lot of gold.
That's a lot of gold.
That's like a tier 3 on everybody.
Yeah.
And more. And that's only if I'm
Every single person on this team, if they weren't 6th slotted first off by now, then they are. And if not, you could just buy a 3K pot.
That is true. I always sometimes forget about those because I'm always wondering, how fast they're going to get the build. Sometimes
They're kind of a little further down the tier. Like, it's not just the build, but then like you also want to upgrade your relics.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
still going to need wards. Like, there's a lot of stuff
wards?
you got to spend your money on.
Who needs wards? That's for the support to buy. That's for the solo laner to maybe get one of them out there. But in all seriousness, though,
I actually think, like, looking through it, I have to double check it, but like solo laners sometimes are some of the worst warders in the game. Like late game they're solid.
yeah.
But like for the first like 15 minutes, they don't do any warding.
Well, a lot of wards in pocket for the Highland Ravens. Everybody holding on to either Sentry or even a ward chalice for Angry. Let's try and get some vision control on the Scorpion side of the map. Right side Phoenix has respawned, so no more fire minions to push there. So they get a little bit of relief in that regard. But still being 15,000+ down.
Yeah, they need some economic relief,
Does,
not just
yeah, they don't just need structural relief. They also need the financial relief to be able to deal with the Highland Ravens. It'll be a joust in by Panvich. Root is going to be good for now, but not a lot of damage being thrown to the Ravens. Dharmic Pillars in the back to zone out the team fight. And Panvich stunned away by adapting. Will force the Scorpions to retreat for now. Preds doesn't get the option or the luxury to make that choice. Guns are caught in the field. Blown up by Coast. Panvich in the middle of 3. Taken down by adapting. That is 2 for him and making a triple as he grabs the last kill. A deicide for the Ravens in game 2 and the set.
So what, 9-0 last week, 8-0 this week. I'm putting out the PSA for everyone in Europe.
No more Ratatosk.
Ban Adapting's Ratatosk. And I believe, going forward,
his Thor too.
That Thor's probably going to be on the rise again, man. So you're probably going to have to take 2 shots there. Downside, that means you're letting through a lot of really powerful picks, but at least it keeps adapting from doing this at you.
Yeah, adapting just kind of got to run this game. Really got to. Are they just waiting? No shot. They're waiting 11 seconds to get one more on the Preds. They're gonna let the minions in this. That's just toxic. Just end the game.
This is a little toxic.
Just end the game,
if I'm
guys.
real with you, this is
all right, you know what?
A little bit.
Respect to Preds for getting the revive. He'll get to live a little bit longer. Minions have shown up. Doesn't matter. They still get the kill. You know what? Adapting wanted to match his score last week, so he gets 9-0 to end it. The Ravens get the win.
Yeah, you're right. I have to amend my statement. 9-0 last week. 9-0 this week again. So he does it twice in a row. I'm starting to think PSA out there for Europe, all those other words that I just said where you ban this one, and then Thor's coming back into the meta probably. It's actually, I was really interested because like the damage numbers on the walls again, someone pointed out, I think it was Chaos had pointed it out that because they had seen it in playtests, it tells you which side of the wall they're on if you get them blind like folded, like if you can't see, so you now know where to throw your hammer, and that's little things like that. And then, of course, give that to adapting in like 2 weeks, and that's too much to handle.
Yeah, that's a little scary. Kind of like how the Highland Ravens were scary in this game, scary in this set. They find themselves the 2-0 victory. This one started off a little bit quicker. We got a few more kills in this game where, instead of going to a 27+ minute Fire Giant with only 4 kills in the game, they were walking in with 8. But the results are the same, just took a little bit longer to get there in game number 2. The Highland Ravens, off the back of 2 early kills by adapting, found that first blood in the dual lane, wrapped his way back around the Gold Fury pit and came back for a second kill over there. Really at least kind of started the pacing for the Ravens. They were able to get early kills. But props to the Scorpions for being able to at least hold out, find little things, grab a Pyromancer here, grab a tier 1 there to kind of stem some of that bleeding that the Ravens had put out there. But it's just so hard whenever you wait until this late in the game to finally pull a 5v5 that far down.
Yeah, look, I think that if you're in positions like this, honestly, and there's something to be said, metas are different, and if you talk to anyone from Europe, they're going to tell you all sorts of reasons as to why it's a lot slower pace than North America. But when you watch the SPL, right, they manage to hit slow pace while being proactive on the map. And I think that's really the step up for a lot of these teams in Europe. And, this goes for the Ravens, but the Ravens were playing it really well. I would equate what they were doing there to the Kings macro in the SPL, right? Where you're just like, you didn't need to fight because they weren't doing anything that made you need to fight. But if they did, the Ravens would step up to do it. I think they played that incredibly well. I think that for teams like the Scorpions in this case, you got to, your draft admittedly in this point didn't necessarily facilitate it, but having the capability to just choose a fight, right? Your Najaz, that's why we've seen him skyrocket in these, is like you can just pick a fight, things like that. So when you start to fall behind, when you're at that 1,000 gold mark, you can say, cool, let's get something for ourselves. Let's force a fight. Let's force something to happen so that you can stop that before it gets out of control, right? You don't need to wait until the 9K lead on the other side. There's definitely going to be some wiggle room. We'll see what they can do to improve as the weeks go on.
Well, congratulations to the Highland Ravens. They find their win this week in week number 2 of the SCC for the European region. We'll take a look at the schedule because we do still have one more match for the European region, but that's going to take place tomorrow morning before the SPL starts up. So make sure you tune in at 11 a.m. to watch Hex Mambo and Styx Ferryman duke it out. See if Hex Mambo can be the other team that remains undefeated up within the European region. 2-0 to the Gladiators in our first set, 2-0 to the Highland Ravens in our second set of the day. That's going to do it, at least for the European side of things. We will get to take a look at the standings as well to kind of see where this places everybody. With 2-0, Highland Ravens at the top. And unfortunately for the Niflheim Wargs, so far the only team to have yet to find a win between their 2 weeks of play. We'll see if maybe the Styx Ferrymen can at least keep themselves out of that same position that the Wargs have been put in.
Yeah, that's going to be their question, tomorrow to answer, right? When they go up against Hex Mambo. So, look, I'm going to tell you, that's going to be a tough matchup for you no matter what. It is just very, very difficult to take on the Mambo at any given time. Hell, SPL teams were struggling with it, right? So you got to figure it out.
With a sub.
And
a jungler on ping.
And they weren't. That was not full power, Hex Mambo, and yet they still were looking really good. I'm curious to see what North America has in store for us this week, because so far Europe has been a blast.
Yeah. And that's the good news for you guys. Now that the European region is done, we can move over to North America. We're at the halfway point of our day. We still got 2 more sets to go. We'll jump to North America right after this break.